That day in the kitchen remains etched in my memory as one of the most chaotic yet thrilling experiences of my life, all due to my stepsister Sophie. On that seemingly ordinary Wednesday afternoon, an eerie quietness filled the house, interrupted solely by the gentle, rhythmic ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen. For much of the day, I found myself solitary within the confines of my home, wandering through the myriad of television channels, searching for a means to occupy the passing hours. My father and his wife, Julia, had embarked on a day of errands or whatever pursuits filled their hours when they disappeared together. That left Sophie and I in solitude within the confines of the house. Sophie and I had never forged a profound connection. Despite our similar ages, we existed as striking opposites in nearly every regard. She was always the one with a keen eye for detail, the kind of girl who devised a plan for every possible scenario. I was the laid-back, easygoing type, content to float along with the flow. Our relationship consistently upheld a veneer of friendliness, yet lingered in a realm of detachment. We inhabited the same space, exchanging polite nods, but that was the extent of our bond. In recent times, however, a subtle change had taken place. In the past few weeks, I noticed a shift in Sophie's perception of me. At first, I found myself doubting my own senses, the way her eyes lingered on mine for a moment longer than necessary, the delicate justifications she wove to draw herself closer to me, positioning herself just a breath away. It was understated, unnoticed by the untrained eye, yet I felt it profoundly. It hovered in the shadows, a subtle force that slowly started to erode my peace of mind. That afternoon, I found myself in the kitchen, casually scrolling through my phone as the sun streamed in through the windows. I tried to ignore the strange energy that seemed to envelop the air whenever Sophie made her entrance. She had lingered in her chamber for what seemed an age, or so I thought, but as I felt the echo of footsteps behind me, I realized she was ready to unveil herself. Salutations. Upon Sophie's entrance into the kitchen, her voice pierced the silence that cloaked the space. I raised my eyes from the screen, and there she stood, silhouetted in the doorway, her arms crossed firmly over her chest. She seemed relaxed, yet an intensity lingered in her gaze, a spark that made my heartbeat quicken just a bit. I replied with a casual demeanor, striving to uphold a sense of calmness. Greetings. With a casual shrug, she ventured further into the kitchen, her gaze firmly fixed on me. There was no specific reason, I simply felt compelled to descend the stairs. The ambience here is quite serene. I inclined my head and set my phone down softly upon the table. Certainly, it is. Julia and Dad are unlikely to be back for a while. Sophie stole a quick look at the clock before her eyes found mine again, a delicate smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I comprehend, and that is exactly the reason I journeyed here. A tightness coiled within me at her utterance, yet the cause remained just out of reach. Her gaze possessed an unusual allure, a captivating mix of playfulness and seriousness that drew me in. It ignited a feeling of discomfort within me, while also kindling my intrigue. Sophie moved toward the stove, her hand reaching for a glass tucked away in the cabinet, and filled it with water. She moved with a deliberate elegance, every step laced with an acute awareness of my watchful eyes. Indeed, I found myself utterly powerless to resist. Her movements possessed an undeniable charm, with strands of hair flowing softly over her shoulders, while the delicate curve of her lips shaped a faint, knowing smile. One found it challenging to look away. "What draws you to this quiet realm?" she asked, taking a moment to relish a sip from her glass while leaning against the counter. I shrugged, striving to keep my demeanor casual. "It appears I am enveloped in a sense of weariness, merely biding my time until they come back." She nodded, her eyes steady and locked onto mine. "Your recent conduct has been quite peculiar." The comment caught me off guard, and I found myself slightly furrowing my brow. "Unusual? Would you be able to elaborate on your meaning?" Sophie tilted her head, a subtle smile blossoming on her lips. I find myself in a state of uncertainty. It appears you have been avoiding my company." My eyes widened, astonished by her sharp perception. I had not contemplated the possibility that I was avoiding her presence. However, it seems that might very well be the truth. The unintentional tension that had been simmering between us was unmistakable, leaving me feeling adrift in my attempts to find a way through it. "I'm not avoiding you," I insisted, yet the tremor in my voice revealed a flicker of doubt. With a subtle arch of her eyebrow, she set her glass down delicately on the counter. "Is that truly the case?" "It appears that you are." I shifted uneasily in my chair, wrestling with the ambiguity of my reply. In truth, I had been keeping a deliberate distance from Sophie. A shadow of uncertainty enveloped us, an elusive change that remained just beyond my understanding. The essence of our bond seemed to shift, casting me into a state of uncertainty as I navigated this unfamiliar landscape. Doubt hung heavily in my thoughts. Was it simply my imagination, or did she also feel this silent bond between us? Nonetheless, I had been striving to set it aside. I caught myself offering a weak excuse, claiming I had simply been busy, fully conscious that it held no genuine justification. Sophie's smile widened as she drew closer, her eyes glimmering with a mysterious charm that eluded my understanding. "It appears you have your hands full, don't you? Are you genuinely too occupied to engage in a conversation with me?" Her voice danced with a playful lilt, but beneath that buoyancy, I sensed a profound, more serious undertone. She was not simply playing with language. A profound truth lay hidden within her silence, an unvoiced depth that echoed far beyond the surface. "I'm not avoiding you, Sophie," I reiterated, my voice softer this time, laced with a hint of uncertainty. She took another step forward, now just 4 feet separating us. The air in the room was thick, a tangible pressure enveloping the distance that lay between us. My heart pounded in my chest, and I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my composure. "I believe you are," she murmured, her gaze probing into mine, "but you don't have to." I halted, briefly taken aback by her words. The space around us felt as though it were closing in, the gap between us narrowing with every passing second. Sophie's presence surrounded me, her nearness shrouding my mind and rendering me disoriented. "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied, my voice lingering in the stillness, the words fading into an empty void. Sophie edged closer, her face mere inches from mine. Her body wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, a soft warmth radiating from her skin. My heart pounded fiercely in my chest, and my mind raced wildly as I fought to comprehend the reality that was unfolding before me. This was my stepsister, a figure who had been woven into the fabric of my life for 2 years. In this instant, she had transcended the identity of a sister. She metamorphosed into an entirely new being. "You needn't wear a mask," Sophie murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have no doubt you felt it too." I held my breath, feeling it catch in my throat as her words pierced through my awareness. She was indeed right. I felt it, the palpable tension, the silent connection that had been subtly developing between us for weeks. I had tried to brush it aside, to convince myself that it was nothing more than a product of my imagination, but now, with her so close, her eyes locked onto mine, the reality was inescapable. I started to articulate my thoughts, but my voice wavered, dissipating into the abyss of doubt. Sophie's hand moved gently, reaching out to lightly brush against my arm. The caress was delicate, nearly otherworldly, yet it sparked a rush of vitality inside me, accelerating my pulse to a thrilling rhythm. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered, a subtle, knowing smile playing on her lips. "And the pretense." Before I could respond, Sophie moved in closer, her lips softly brushing against my cheek. The act was simple, almost innocent, yet it sparked every essence of my existence. I stood frozen, ensnared in a fleeting instant where both movement and contemplation slipped away as the gravity of the emerging truth enveloped me. This was not simply a creation of my mind, it was a tangible tension that hung in the atmosphere. Sophie felt it too, and at that moment, there was no way to retreat. I stood still, entranced as Sophie's lips brushed against my cheek. It was not a full kiss, but rather a flirtatious tease, an implication of something deeper, and yet it was enough to set my heart aflame. The gentle warmth of her breath caressed my skin, and the subtle weight of her lips lingered in the atmosphere, a teasing reminder of the intimacy we shared. "Sophie," I murmured, my voice barely lifting above a whisper. I found myself grappling with an absence of words, uncertain of the sentiments I genuinely sought to convey. A part of me compelled a retreat, to end this before it could deepen, while another, the one I had fought to keep at bay, longed for her presence, eager to explore the journey that awaited us. She stood motionless. Instead, she bestowed upon me a soft, knowing smile that set my heart racing. "What could it be?" she asked with an air of innocence, as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. The tension that hung between us was unmistakable, a palpable energy crackling in the air like static electricity. I started with "we can't," yet those words reverberated within me, empty and hollow, as if my own voice lacked the strength of belief. My thoughts spun in a tumultuous ballet, wrestling to comprehend the reality that was revealing itself. Before me stood Sophie, my stepsister. This was not correct, was it? Once again, she moved, closing the distance between us, her figure softly brushing against mine. The warmth radiated from her skin, a tender softness in her touch as she raised her hand and placed it gently against my chest. A wave of emotions crashed over me, leaving my breath momentarily suspended in my throat. A swirl of confusion, a spark of excitement, a tinge of fear, and a fleeting sensation that eluded my reach. "Who has the audacity to assert that we are incapable?" she murmured, her eyes locked onto mine with unwavering focus. Her eyes bore a challenge, a question suspended in the air between us. I swallowed hard, striving to clear my thoughts, but it was a losing battle with her so close, her touch igniting tremors in every fiber of my being. "You grasped the rationale I expressed," my voice quivering with doubt. Sophie's hand traced a delicate path down my chest, her fingers embarking on a slow, deliberate exploration that quickened my heartbeat even further. "Am I?" she asked softly, a playful grin flickering across her face. "Your longing for this seems to reflect my own sentiments." Her words hit me like a sudden gust of wind, leaving me gasping and my mind swirling in chaos. Was she right? Did I long for this from the outset? A shiver ran through me, mingling with a surge of guilt that rose from deep inside, but alongside it, there was another force, one that was undeniably stronger. A part of my essence had awaited this moment for ages, longing for it in ways I had not entirely recognized. "I do not." I started again, yet my voice dwindled, leaving the thought unfinished. Sophie edged nearer, her form intertwining with mine, and I felt the rapid beat of her heart thrumming beneath her skin. Her eyes radiated an intensity, overflowing with a mixture of desire and curiosity, making it entirely impossible to look away. "There's no need for fear," she murmured, her fingers gliding up to cradle the side of my neck, her thumb grazing softly along my jawline. "The time for pretense has passed." The earth appeared to tremble beneath my feet, as though reality itself had skewed, casting me into a tumultuous dance of confusion. There was an unmistakable discord in the air, yet it harmonized with an unsettling sense of destiny, as though we had been treading a long-forged path toward this precise instant, even if neither of us was willing to admit it. "This is Sophie." I made another attempt, but my voice trembled. She shook her head, silencing me with the softest of movements, her fingers brushing delicately against my lips. "It's all right," she whispered, her tone steady and resolute. Silence speaks volumes. In that ephemeral instant, just before I could step in, Sophie approached, her lips brushing against mine in a kiss that was both tender and infused with an unmistakable electricity. It commenced gently, imbued with a hint of hesitation, as if she were extending an invitation for me to withdraw. Nevertheless, I held back. I found myself unable to do so. In that moment, I found myself kissing her back, my hands instinctively moving to her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, igniting a wave of heat within me, spreading like wildfire. Every nerve in my body tingled, each inch of my skin pulsating with the electric intensity of the moment. Sophie's fingers danced through my hair, her body pressing against mine, crafting a weight that turned each breath into a struggle. This was authentic. This was in the process of revealing itself. I longed for it to stretch on forever as we finally parted, breathless and filled with exhilaration. Our foreheads touched softly, a fleeting moment of closeness, as we both tried to catch our breath. The world blurred into a soft mist, and for a fleeting moment it seemed as though time had come to a standstill, as if nothing else mattered but the two of us, standing in the kitchen, caught in an unforeseen moment that neither of us could have foreseen. "What has just occurred?" I whispered, my voice quaking yet overflowing with disbelief. Sophie's lips curved into a soft, yet mischievous smile as her eyes locked onto mine. "What is this feeling?" I swallowed hard, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic tempest. I found myself utterly speechless in reaction to that. The essence of our relationship appeared to have shifted, as the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks finally burst forth into the light. It appeared that there was no way to retreat, no possibility of undoing the occurrences that had just transpired. "I don't know," I admitted quietly, my fingers resting gently on her waist. "Nevertheless, this is not a path we can follow." Sophie's smile flickered ever so slightly, but she stood her ground, unwavering in her resolve. Instead, she looked at me with an intensity that made my heart race once more. "What holds us back?" she asked, her voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "What restrains us?" Her words ignited a tempest of bewilderment and excitement within me, tightening my stomach in a knot. This was erroneous. It must have been an oversight. Nevertheless, the depth of her stare and the gentleness of her kiss made everything feel intensely real, completely unavoidable. "Text, you're my stepsister," I whispered, the words escaping my mouth with a delicate uncertainty, as though they served not as a justification, but rather as a weak endeavor to make sense of the circumstances. Sophie raised an eyebrow, a smile slowly returning to her lips. "What significance does it hold?" she asked, her voice soft but resolute. "Though we are not bound by blood, we are simply two distinct souls. Do not let that impede your journey forward." Her reasoning set my thoughts in a tumultuous spin. In a technical sense, she occupied the rightful stance. Though we were not connected by blood, our relationship was shaped entirely by the intertwining of our parents' lives. Still, the weight of that truth hung heavily upon me, creating a shadow that seemed impossible to escape. But what of them? "What is the current status between Dad and Julia?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophie's smile faded, and she released a soft sigh, pulling back a bit to create a slight space between us. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, "yet I am aware that I can no longer pretend that nothing is unfolding between us." Her words resonated within me, unleashing a cascade of emotions, a tumult of guilt, a fog of confusion, and an elusive depth that I found difficult to articulate. She was undeniably right. We could no longer uphold the pretense. The tension that had quietly brewed between us for far too long had finally reached its peak, and now that the moment had come, there was no turning back. "What shall we do now?" I hesitated, my thoughts still swirling, unsure if we could just brush this aside. Sophie nodded, her eyes soft as they locked onto mine. "We don't need to solve everything at this moment," she said softly. "Let us proceed gradually, one step at a time." Her words brought a surprising calm to the storm that had been raging inside me. She was undoubtedly right. We need not have all the answers at once. What we truly required was to face the truth, both within ourselves and in our interactions with one another, concerning the situation that was unfolding. I took a deep breath, feeling the constriction in my chest start to fade away. Indeed, I responded with a soft and soothing voice. Advancement reveals itself slowly, one deliberate step after another. Sophie smiled, a genuine and sincere smile this time, and the sight of it enveloped my heart in warmth. "We'll figure it out," she murmured softly, harmonizing with the moment. In that ephemeral moment, I discovered a belief in her. Nevertheless, the story was far from finished. The days that followed that crucial moment in the kitchen slipped away in a haze, and the tension between Sophie and me seemed to grow stronger with every hour that ticked by. It transcended the mere memory of that kiss, or the way her fingertips kindled a fire deep within me. We felt the weight of our crossing, a boundary now irrevocably sealed behind us, leaving everything transformed. We sought to traverse our days as though all was as it had always been, as if nothing had occurred, yet this endeavor revealed itself to be an impossible challenge. Each time we occupied the same space, the air shimmered with an unspoken tension, a vibrant energy that hung between us. With every passing look and each accidental touch, my heart quickened, reflecting the passion I saw in Sophie's gaze. An undeniable force seemed to pull us closer, even as we recognized the danger that awaited us. One evening, about a week after that event in the kitchen, I sat on the couch in the living room, trying to focus on the television, but my mind kept wandering. The delicate sound of Sophie moving through the kitchen filled the air, mingling with the subtle clink of plates and the soft thump of cabinet doors closing as she organized the remnants of dinner. Once again, my father and Julia had set out, probably off to another dinner party, leaving the house empty of company except for the two of us. The stillness of the house wrapped around me, a profound void that magnified the cacophony of my mind. Sophie occupied my mind entirely, her gaze cutting through me like a knife, the feeling of her lips grazing mine, and the warmth of her touch that lingered long after she had retreated. Every second in her company crackled with an unarticulated energy, and the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. Just as I was about to rise and retreat to my room, Sophie appeared in the doorway of the living room, her hands drying on a dish towel. For a fleeting instant, she held her silence, her eyes locked onto mine with unwavering intensity. The look on her face sent a shiver down my spine, and I could sense my heart pounding in my chest. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked, her voice soft, but laced with a subtle hint of something I couldn't quite place. I nodded, feeling a tightness constricting my throat. With a sense of purpose, Sophie stepped into the room, tossing the dish towel onto a nearby chair before taking her place on the edge of the couch, mere feet away from me. The air crackled with energy, and I felt my heart pounding fiercely in my chest. "What is it regarding?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. For a fleeting moment, I found myself suspended in a delicate web of uncertainty, pondering how best to articulate my response. She had taken residence in my mind, entwined with the echoes of our shared moments ever since that fateful evening in the kitchen. Yet I found myself grappling with an absence of words, unsure if I was ready to confront the reality of what was transpiring between us. All that I finally expressed, my voice barely lifting above a murmur. Sophie nodded, her gaze steady and unyielding, firmly fixed on mine. Indeed, I resonate with that feeling. For a brief instant, we remained in quietude, the weight of everything left unsaid enveloping us like a dense mist. The air crackled with tension, an unseen thread binding us closer with every passing second. In that instant, it dawned on me that if I didn't stand up and create some space right away, the circumstances were set to escalate in a way I wasn't sure I could manage. Still, I lingered. Instead, I found myself drawn nearer to her, as if an invisible force had taken hold of me, one I could no longer defy. Sophie stood her ground, unwavering in her resolve. She fixed her gaze upon me, her eyes soft and inviting, mirroring the same yearning that danced across her features. Her longing reflected my own. "We had agreed to take it slow," I whispered, my voice quivering with emotion. Sophie smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that made my heart race. "We are proceeding with caution," she whispered softly. Nevertheless, that does not suggest we should ignore the events that are unfolding before us. Her words ignited a wave of energy inside me, and before I could hold back, I leaned in, closing the distance that lay between us. Sophie met me halfway, her lips brushing against mine in a kiss that was soft, tentative, echoing the memory of our very first meeting. In that moment, there existed a complete lack of hesitation and guilt. Finally, we yielded to the undeniable tension that had been brewing between us for weeks. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, as Sophie's hand glided up to rest on the back of my neck, pulling me closer. My heart pounded in my chest, a vivid energy surging through my skin, charged by the sheer intensity of the moment. In that instant, it seemed as if the universe faded away, leaving just her presence behind. Her touch, her warmth, her very presence, the nucleus of my existence. As we finally parted, our breaths came in ragged gasps, our foreheads softly brushing against each other as we endeavored to reclaim our composure. The world dissolved into a mist, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though we were the only souls in the boundless stretch of the cosmos. I gently proposed that perhaps we should consider stopping, even though, beneath the surface, my heart didn't genuinely align with the suggestion. My hands rested on her waist, a hesitant hold I found difficult to let go of. Sophie smiled, her fingers gently tracing the contours of my face. "Are you genuinely prepared to bring this to a close?" In a fleeting instant, my heart raced within my chest. Uncertainty envelopes me, a reluctance to disturb the fragile equilibrium that exists. She released a soft sigh, her forehead resting tenderly against mine. "I appreciate your viewpoint, yet it seems we may not be creating any disturbance in the end. Perhaps we are merely charting our course through it all." Her words hung in the air between us, and I realized I could not refute the truth in what she had said. This seemed deliberate, not a mere blunder, but rather something that felt wholly appropriate. A palpable energy had been building for what felt like an eternity, and now, at long last, it surged forth, unveiling its true essence. "I don't know what we're supposed to do," I admitted, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. Sophie leaned in, her voice unwavering. "Yet I am aware," she remarked. In that fleeting moment, I could no longer hold back, and she sensed my turmoil, leading her lips to collide with mine. With passion, we yielded to the present. The experience was truly remarkable. In that instant, I found myself completely enveloped in the experience, utterly entranced by the closeness that blossomed from the kiss, rendering the world around me almost non-existent. My eagerness seemed to hasten the outcome, yet she remained unperturbed by the entire affair. A surge of relief enveloped me. After a brief moment of stillness, she moved, standing tall as she proclaimed, "We'll figure it out," before disappearing up the stairs. As she approached the stairs, I gave a subtle nod, but deep within, a quiet certainty remained that the journey ahead would not unfold as simply as it seemed. The days that followed seemed to stretch on, as though we were caught in a strange limbo, a reality suspended in time. Sophie and I found ourselves in a realm unexplored, where turning back was no longer a possibility. Every glance, every touch, every fleeting moment carried a weight that hung in the air between us, unvoiced yet undeniably felt. Although we never uttered a word about the occurrences that unfolded between us, the bond remained, tangible and unavoidable. I strove to uphold my routine with a hint of normalcy, yet an unmistakable change hung in the atmosphere, as though everything had shifted. Sophie's presence in the house commanded attention. Her footsteps resonated gently as she traversed the area, and her gaze seemed to possess a palpable intensity, following my every motion whenever we occupied the same space. The air thickened around us, each interaction crackling with an unspoken intensity, heavy with feelings left unsaid. One evening, about a week after that second kiss, we found ourselves alone in the house once again. My dad and Julia had gone out for dinner, leaving us wrapped in a silence that amplified every thought, every feeling. Seated at the kitchen table, I found my fingers absently flipping through the pages of a magazine that failed to capture my attention, a weak effort to distract myself from the heavy tension that seemed to intensify with every passing second. Sophie glided into the kitchen, her movements deliberate, and my heart quickened as she took her place in the chair across from me. The room was enveloped in a soft twilight, with the only light spilling from the lamp suspended above the table, casting intricate shadows that played across her face. At first, she was quiet, just sitting there, her eyes fixed on mine, her expression shrouded in enigma. "We need to talk," she finally said, her voice a gentle whisper, yet imbued with unwavering determination. I set the magazine down, my heart racing within my chest. The gravity of this dialogue hung in the air, an inevitable specter I had been bracing myself to confront. The pretense that all was well could no longer be sustained. We could no longer ignore the unmistakable shadow that hovered before us. "Indeed," I replied, my voice quivering. "It appears that we certainly do." Sophie leaned in slightly, her fingers woven together on the table's surface before her. For a fleeting instant, she held her silence, her eyes locked onto mine as if weighing the most fitting way to begin. The silence surrounding us was dense, almost suffocating, and I felt the weight of all the unsaid thoughts pressing heavily upon me. "I don't know what to do," she murmured, her eyes glistening with a mix of uncertainty and fragility. "I find myself pondering the appropriate way for us to carry ourselves in this moment." I nodded, my throat constricting as I sought the ideal words to convey my thoughts. "I share that sentiment. To be completely candid, I discovered myself lacking any solutions. My thoughts were shrouded in uncertainty. I found myself uncertain about our forthcoming actions and the journey that lay before us. All I grasped was that the interplay between us had transformed, and there was no way to return to the bygone days we once cherished. "Do you experience any regret for it?" Sophie asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Her question caught me off guard, and a tide of panic washed over me. Did I experience any regret for it? The kisses, the moments we shared, the connection that had been blossoming between us for weeks? My thoughts swirled like a storm as I wrestled with her question, yet the answer was clear, even if I was reluctant to admit it. "No," I murmured softly, shaking my head. "Regret holds no place in my heart." Sophie's shoulders relaxed slightly, and I noticed a flicker of relief shimmering in her eyes. "Neither did I," she confessed, her voice scarcely rising above a whisper. Yet an overwhelming sense of dread surrounds me. I knitted my brow, leaning in closer. "What is there to dread?" With a gentle exhale, she ran her fingers through her hair, striving to gather her disarrayed thoughts. "I'm terrified by what this means," she whispered, her voice trembling. A chill runs through me at the mere contemplation of what awaits if we persist on this course. A chill runs through me at the mere contemplation of the consequences that may arise from our decision to remain passive. Her words hit me with a power that created a knot in my throat. Her sentiment struck a chord with me, echoing my own feelings. A fragment of my soul longed to press on, to delve into the intricacies of the connection we held and to see where it could lead us. Yet within me lingered a deep-seated terror, an overwhelming dread of the potential fallout, consumed by thoughts of how it would affect our family, my father and Julia. "I don't know what the right thing is," I confessed, my voice barely rising above a whisper. "Nevertheless, the mere idea of being without you envelopes me in a profound sense of fear." Sophie looked up at me, her eyes overflowing with emotion. "You won't," she whispered softly. "Yet we must decipher this enigma." I nodded, my heart pounding fiercely against the walls of my chest. "Certainly, we do." For a prolonged stretch, we lingered in silence, the weight of our conversation hanging heavily in the air. The atmosphere hummed with an unmistakable tension, a vibrant energy that hung in the air between us, filling the space we occupied. Yet an extra layer hung in the atmosphere. A deep realization dawned, an understanding that the journey we were undertaking could no longer be maintained. A choice loomed ahead. In a swift motion, Sophie stood up from her chair, the sound of it scraping against the floor echoing as she approached the window. She paused for a heartbeat, her eyes fixed on the deepening shadows that stretched across the sky. Her arms were crossed firmly over her chest. I watched her intently, my mind a tempest of thoughts, as I wrestled with the words to utter and the steps to follow. What if we paused for a moment? She proposed at last, her back remaining toward me. Could it be time for a moment of reflection? I reiterated, my brow knitting together in concern. Sophie turned to face me, her expression serious. Truly, a moment of relief from the chaos that surrounds us. Let us take a moment to pause, to uncover our genuine aspirations. Her words echoed with precision, yet they wrapped around me in a veil of discomfort. The thought of withdrawing, of putting distance between us, tightened my chest with an unsettling grip. In that instant, I grasped the profound truth embedded in her words. We could no longer continue in this way, trapped in a situation that slipped beyond our understanding. Perhaps that is a prudent thought, I whispered, yet the words weighed heavily upon my tongue. Sophie nodded, her eyes soft as they locked onto mine. We don't have to make any decisions right now, she said gently, but we need some space to figure things out. I struggled to swallow, nodding in agreement. You make a valid observation. The room fell into silence again, but this time it bore a palpable heaviness. The tension that once surrounded us started to fade, revealing a fresh clarity and a profound understanding. While we may not have possessed all the answers, we had set forth on the first steps of our journey into the unknown. And that was enough for the time being. Sophie rejoined the table, settling back into her seat across from me, her hand reaching out to envelop mine in a soft embrace. A sudden warmth enveloped me, sparking a deep and meaningful connection. Her touch wrapped around me like a warm embrace, instilling a profound sense of familiarity and comfort. In that ephemeral instant, I grasped the weight of my feelings. No matter the unpredictable paths our relationship might traverse, the mere thought of losing her was unbearable. Her importance in my life was beyond measure. We'll figure it out, she murmured, her thumb caressing the back of my hand with a tender touch. Every day reveals itself in its unique rhythm. I inclined my head, my fingers gently encircling hers. Every day reveals itself in its unique rhythm. In that fleeting moment, it dawned on me that she was, without a doubt, right. There was no urgency in our choices. It is not essential for us to have every answer right now. We had no choice but to welcome each day as it arrived, permitting events to reveal themselves in their own cadence. As the evening unfolded, the tension that had hung between us slowly melted away, replaced by a peaceful sense of calm. There was no need to explore the past or ponder the future. We were compelled to stand by each other, to adopt a deliberate rhythm, to explore the intricacies of our feelings. That night, our lips lingered untouched by the tender sweetness of a kiss. We decided to refrain from progressing the situation any further. In the quiet of the kitchen, we stood close, fingers laced together, sharing a conversation that twirled around the ordinary, relishing the uncomplicated joy of our togetherness. The weight of our situation remained, but it no longer pressed upon us with the same force it had before. We had set forth on the first leg of our quest for understanding, and that in itself was enough. As the minutes elongated into hours and the stillness wrapped around the house, a profound realization began to unfold within me. No matter the events that unfolded between Sophie and me, and regardless of the decisions we would face in the days to come, one truth remained unmistakably clear in my mind. I had crossed a line that was irrevocable, yet deep down it scarcely disturbed me.